Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you so much for investing your time. I'm so glad to be here. And I am so glad that you are too. I'm Sarah Kostrub, the visionary for Liberated Badass Coaching and Consulting firm. And I had a really interesting story that I wanted to share with you. A little thing that happened in my own life. Which is so relevant for what's going on just these last few days in America, in our country, a couple of different situations where race and the impacts of racism and privilege have had. And while I take in very limited news and very limited information on what goes on in the world so that I can protect my own mind, and it's a personal decision that I have found to help keep me in the best space possible. I only take in a very limited amount of outside news, but I do have a handful of friends specifically that I keep in contact with and that help keep me up to date on what's going on. So I know there have been a couple of different circumstances that have been highlighted in the news recently that basically, for me, highlight the disparity in our country and in the world, but really highlight the distinctions and disparity between people who are privileged and people who are not. I don't know. Is there a better way to say that? I'm sure there is, but when the camera's in front of me, sometimes I don't have the right words to say. But basically for me, it shows up in what it says is there is this disparity between those that are the same as me and those that are not. And as someone specifically in our country who is white, Caucasian, I feel even more compelled to share openly, to share about it, because I am a pretty firm believer if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And silence is a huge part of the problem across the board. That's like a blanket statement across the board. Our silence, one's silence, and not sharing our stories is a part of a problem. And it is a huge part of the collective problem of why the world is in such a crazed, screwed up place. Basically, big picture, right? We're pretty fucked. Big picture. And I use that not lightly to say, but big picture, we're in a lot of trouble. Financially, energetically, health-wise, there are just so many issues in the world. So bringing that all back to sharing my story and being able to make some kind of public statement in sharing my story. So racism, right, is a thing. It's a huge thing. Privilege, it's a huge thing. And there are a lot of people who don't agree on the topic, right? People who will say they're not racist, that racism doesn't exist, that privilege isn't a thing, and privilege doesn't exist. And it all comes down to people's hard work, and what they put out in life is what you get back. I have yet to be convinced of that theory, that what you put in is what you get back. And I would say that we all start at different points. I know for myself personally, I started at a really great point. And when I say that, what I mean started my life with a lot of really good things. And so I'm a obsessed systems person. I love systems. And it is the way that my brain analyzes data is by analyzing the system. And so when you think about where we came from, so I'm just going to use myself as the example. Where I came from, I was born into a middle to upper class family. Obviously, I'm white, and my parents were both college educated and came from upper middle class families. Right there, just all of that information alone, in my mind, I'm already starting with more than a lot of the world. So if you just look at everybody in the world and what they start with when they're born. There are those people who are born with a lot and those people who are born with little. And then there's everybody in between. But the basis of that is we're all starting from somewhere. And if you've started already your life with a lot of the things in our world that makes it where you get more opportunities immediately afforded to you, that's how I define privilege, is that you've already started with a whole bunch of things that the next person over there didn't have when they were born. So if I was born to college-educated parents and Susie was born to high school-educated parents, well, I'm already starting out with more than she started out with. And that's just like a fact. That's not actually even something that I understand how we debate. Like, how is that even a debate? Of course I start out with more than she does. And so naturally now what I do with it myself, that is up to me. And that is where it does come down to me. And what I put in is what I get out. So big picture, right? Now I've like given you lots of context for my perception of privilege and racism being alive and well. And I know it's alive and well because I know it's in me. I know I've started out with more than a lot of other people. And I know that there are beliefs and circumstances that happen in my life, inside of my head, inside of my experience, that tell me that racism is alive and a thing that we must contend with. And if you're a person that is a helper, if you are a leader, if you are a person that wants to have an impact on the world, one of the things that we must sort out in our own personal lives so that we know the best way to show up in the world, in our work, in our families, in the way that we present ourselves, is to contend with this concept of other and how we honor and respect other people who are different than us in whatever way people are different. We are different by gender, by our sexual identity, our sexual preference. We're different in the colors that our skin is. We're different in the way that we think, in the beliefs that we hold. I mean, like 1,000 different ways we're different. And so how I choose to handle someone who's different than I am, someone who's different from all of those ways that I am me, that has a ginormous impact on the type of person that we are on the planet and the different ways that we make people feel when we're engaging with them. So real quick, I am dating and definitely have the desire in my heart to find an amazing person who is a lot like me and on the same vibe and with the same goals in life. And so one of the things that I did years and years ago, before I was married, I tried out this company called It's Just Lunch. And so one of the representatives and I had a terrible experience. I would never recommend them. But I'm on their database, right? I'm on their radar. And so of course, being that they are doing a really good job at marketing right now, they have been calling all of their past members. And so I got a call. And she convinces me, she's got enough skills to convince me to take the next step with her, which is to update my profile. And so we're updating my profile. She was very good because honestly, the last handful of people who've reached out to me to market, to attempt to get me to sign up, I just flat out told them, I had a terrible experience with you the last time. No. This time I'm in like a different place in my own head. I want to really focus in on the dating and finding a partner, making myself available for an amazing partner to come into my life. And so I'm in the right space for her, and the energies collide to where I agree to update my profile. And so she's asking me the slew of questions. If you've ever filled out a dating profile, you know it's like 1,000 questions, and it's all about the type of person you're looking for, the type of person you are. You know, what are you attracted to? What did you like about the last guy you dated? What did you not like about him? Are you looking for someone who's a homebody or someone who goes out? Are you looking for someone that's college educated? All of those details, your preferences. And so we're going through all of these, and she gets to a couple of different ones that I really struggled to give like a concrete, solid answer. And I realized, so one of them was race. And so the way she posed the question was, like I said, she had some really good skills, because she got me to consider the fact that I am not clear in my answer when I have when I'm interacting with a dating profile, where I'm called to answer, what race are you most attracted to? What race are you most attracted to, or what ethnicities are you open to? And so I talked it out with her, which is definitely a bonus for doing an actual dating service versus an online profile, right? You can't interact with the online profile as you're filling it out. It's like you have to answer one way. And so I reasoned it out with her, and I was like, well, to be honest, I've only ever dated white, Caucasian men. And when I reasoned it out, I was like, but I don't want to be limited to only Caucasian men. I mean, there are lots of amazing men out there that are of all types of ethnicities. And I'm like, annoyed that we're even asking this question as part of the dating profile. And so I start to like get annoyed, and I reason it out with her on the phone, and I'm like, doesn't that sucks that like I've only dated Caucasian men? And so like I start to ask myself as I'm on the call with her, I'm starting to reason and process it out loud. I do that a lot. And I realized, I was like, but I'm not limited. I've met lots of amazing men of all different types of ethnicities. And so then she says to me, but have you actually dated them? And I was like, no. But why is that? That's so weird that I haven't actually dated them. And so as we talked it out, I realized part of that is simply because the world that I grew up in, my environment, the people I came into contact with in my formative years, were mostly white. We're mostly Caucasian. Not out of like anything bad, right? I mean, my parents were, there was a time period where my dad's a pastor, and so we were at a church in Alaska, of all places, which is ironically diverse in the sense that there were Eskimos, so a lot of Native American Indians, and then also a lot of Japanese folks, Asian, primarily what I remember at least was Japanese. So it's actually it is actually quite diverse, surprisingly diverse. And yet the people that my parents were friends with, and the people that I then was friends with primarily, were people who were just like us. Not by active choices of like, we're anti anyone. Quite the contrary. My parents were associated with all different types of people. Loved the Asian, Japanese pastor at the church, and loved the Native American pastor and his family. And so we interacted at a certain level with all different types of people. However, what I would say is at the end of the day, that we were primarily in close relationship with people who were like us. And so when I say that, it's like people who were Caucasian, people who held the same beliefs, who held the same thoughts and values and all of that, and who had the same ambitions, the same goals, the same big pictures in mind, their same vision, future in mind. And so here now at 42, dating, it's like, she was like, well, let's put down white, Caucasian, because you'll have the best chance of actually finding someone if you go ahead and admit that you are and have primarily dated white men. And I was like, man, does that suck? Like, I don't know, that really offends me, and it sucks because it really highlights the reality, to me, it highlights the reality of both privilege and racism, alive and well. And that is not anything even specific. For me, racism at the end of the day is honestly, it's all about what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with naturally. And I think that's why I was so offended, because it was like, man, are we really still in that world where it's just not comfortable to be with the other? Even though I've been exposed and I love so many people of all varying types, it really does still come down to who are we interacting with, because the people we're interacting with are the people we're the most comfortable with. And the people that we're most comfortable with are oftentimes the people who are just like us. So anyway, I get on to share my thoughts because I want to have a voice in the arena. And if you're like me and or you vibe on my level, I want to put a voice out there to be heard and to start the conversation so that we can become even more comfortable with the other and open up the dialogue to be able to ultimately wake up to a life that we truly love. So thanks so much for spending time with me and hearing my story, and we'll talk soon. Go do that thing you most want to be doing today, and I'll talk to you soon.